Hello, welcome to Lessons of Vietnam. My name is Bill Dixon. I'll be your host tonight. We're going to follow up from the last show. The women who served was part of the symposiums that we did with the North Carolina History Museum some time back. So we're going to be watching the final part of that. You can go back in, if you missed the first show, you can go back into the archives and see the first three ladies of the show. I think you really enjoyed it. If you missed it, to go back and see what they had to say. There was a pretty varied background. We had one that was an engineer. We had one that worked at the American Embassy, and we had one that was with the American Red Cross. She was not a donut dolly, as most people think the Red Cross was. She was actually a psychologist with them. And tonight's show, we're going to be having Judy Jones, who was a nurse there in Vietnam, which is what most people think the women who served in Vietnam were. And after Judy gets through, we're going to have a question and answer period. And if you have any questions or comments, tune in and send Amnon your question or comment or whatever. And if you want to dial in at 919-518-9773, do that. We always love for you to tune in and give us your comments and so forth. And a little bit later, I'll tell you about our next show. Looking forward to hearing what Judy has to say, and we'll get started on it. Our next guest panelist is, remember, the Army Nurse Corps. Actually, the nurses were in Vietnam as early as 1956, the Army Nurse Corps. They were sent there to train the Vietnamese in nursing skills, but from 1962 to 1973, there were 5,000 nurses who served in Vietnam. 5 nurses died over the course of the war, and they're on the wall. The Vietnam War is the first major conflict to use the helicopter. 8? Well, no, all of them were not nurses. Well, I guess they were nurses. Yeah. The Air Force lost one on Operation Baby Lift, so there were 8. Okay. The Vietnam War was the first war that we started using the helicopters to bring in casualties, which was a whole new world for the nurses also, because they were seeing more casualties. Also, they were having to do triage. They were having different entries with more patients coming in and quicker. But because of the helicopter, and especially for the nurses, 98% of every wounded soldier who got to a hospital survived. And that's all from the good hard work of the nurses and the care and so forth. So they served a great duty over there. And they were probably making decisions and so forth. A lot of doctors back in the States would be having to make quick decisions, who got treated, and probably doing some treating and so forth. They averaged working a 12 to 36-hour shift, depending on what was coming in. Judy joined the Army Nurses Corps Washer-Sealing Nursing School, and upon graduation, she became a second lieutenant, a butter bar, and then she went off to Vietnam. Now, you came in through Thompson Air Base?
No, I came in through Benoit.
Benoit 9th replacement, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did you come in with GIs on the plane, or?
Funny story to tell you about that. When my parents were taking me to the airport, I was in Pennsylvania. They were taking me to the airport, and I reread my orders, and I was supposed to be on a plane load of nurses the day before. So I thought, oh, I'm AWOL. So when I got to the airport, they said, oh, no problem. We've got a plane load of GIs going out. We'll have you on that plane. So like Lee, besides the stewardess, I was the only female on the plane. And when we stopped at our first stop to refuel, I talked to one of the GIs, and I told him what I did, and I said, I'm AWOL, right? He said, oh, yes, ma'am, you sure are. And I thought, oh, that didn't help any. But then when I got back on the plane, some of the guys said, don't worry about it. That happens all the time, and what are they going to do? They're going to send you to Vietnam? And the only person that said anything to me the day I arrived, the day late, was my husband, because he had arrangements made for when I landed to be picked up, to be taken to Saigon, where we would be living to our quarters. Nobody else said anything about why did you get here late.
So you were married at the time, and where was he?
We were married in May of 1970. He left for jungle school in June, came back for a few days, and he headed to Vietnam. So he was already over there. I didn't get over there till September of 70.
Okay. Now, were you all stationed close together?
Yes, we were together.
Oh, okay.
I think he pulled some strings, because when I had envisioned going to Vietnam, I figured I'd be close to the battle, like it was China Beach, MASH stories and all that. And I ended up at 3rd Field, and I have since read a book, Women in Vietnam, and a lot of them, when they got over there, they said, these are the places we need nurses, where do you want to go? I wasn't asked that. When I got my orders, I was told where I was going, so I think my husband had a little bit to do with that, so we would be together over there.
Now, did you live on post, or did you live or around the hospital, or did you live
We lived in like a big hotel. You had like hotel rooms, and we were right across the street from the hospital. So all I had to do was get up, get dressed, and go right across the street to go to work.
Okay. Now, what did you do there in the hospital?
Okay.
First of all, you're just out of nursing school,
Right,
and you end up in a place called Vietnam, where there's a war going on.
right.
I won't ask you how old you were, but you had to be pretty young, and going from nursing school to a place like Saigon, which you probably didn't know a whole lot about the country or so forth, or other than there was a war going on over there. But what was it like to arrive in Vietnam?
Okay. If I can, I'll go back just a few steps.
Okay.
I was 22. I knew I was going to end nursing in high school. So senior year, I knew I was going to nursing school, and I had in the back of my mind, I'm going to join the Army, and I'm going to Vietnam. And I thought, but that war will be long over. So when I graduated, senior year in nursing school, we were shown in public health rotation a combat nursing and nursing in Vietnam. Well, that did it for me. I said, I'm joining the Army. And I walked one day up to the recruiting office, got information, talked to the recruiter and so forth. When I went home one week and I talked to my parents and my brother had been drafted, but he didn't serve in Vietnam. My parents were not enthused about what I was talking about doing, and neither was my brother. He said, Judy, you don't want to do that. Well, I thought about it some more. My parents thought about it a little bit, and they said, well, if that's what you want to do, you'll do it eventually when you can on your own. So they signed the papers for me to join, because then I would, when I joined, got paid as a PFC my last year of nursing school. So then, as he said, I was commissioned in January of 1970, second lieutenant, before I went to basic. And in basic at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio, Texas, our class was asked, does anybody want to volunteer to go to Vietnam? And there were several of us. So when we signed the papers and everything, we were told, when you get to your first active duty station, you will receive special training to go to Vietnam. My first active duty station was at Fort Gordon in Augusta, Georgia. When I arrived, talked to the colonel in charge, and I told her that statement, what I was told in basic. She shook her head and she said, I don't know what you're talking about. We don't have any special training. I thought, oh, great. But I was assigned to orthopedic wards, and I thought, okay, this is training, because when I arrived in Vietnam at 3rd Field, that's what I worked on, was orthopedics. I arrived in Vietnam, it was during the night, September of 1970. And as we were flying in country, I had a window seat in the airplane, and I'm looking out and I'm seeing all these flashing lights and everything, and I'm thinking, oh, I made a comment to the GI sitting next to me, it's thundering out there, they're having thunderstorms. And he looked at me and he said, no ma'am, that's not a thunderstorm. So I knew what he was talking about then. There was fighting going on as we were arriving at Benoit. So that was, a little frightening. When we got to Benoit and landed, we were all put in a big room, and they sat down and said, okay, you don't do this, you don't do this, and all that. After they got through all that, they said, okay, go find your duffel bag and get on the bus to head to where you're supposed to go. And of course, my husband said, now when you leave, spray your duffel bag with bright orange paint or something so that it'd be easy for you to see. And when I walked out the door, I could pick up my duffel bag right away because I had orange paint on it. But I got on a bus to go to Long Bend and spent the night there, and my husband met me there. And as we're going up the steps to go where we were going to spend the night, the GIs started hollering, ma'am, you can't go up there. On a bus to go to Long Bend. And I just kept right on going there, and my husband had already made the arrangements. We're going up the steps during the night. We're going to spend the night. I have to go to the bathroom. And I was thinking about that on the way here this evening. I thought, my husband didn't even say, well, come on, I'll go with you. I had to go out there by myself. So I went out, had to ask somebody where the latrine was. Pitch dark, no lights, anything. And I still say there was trees, bushes, or something right behind the latrine. So, of course, as I went in there, I didn't linger long. I was out of there quick. And the next morning then, he had arranged for a Papasan and his taxi to come and pick us up, and we headed to Third Field to Saigon. And like I said, when I met with the colonel there that was in charge of nursing, she didn't say a word about me arriving late or anything, and of course I was assigned on orthopedic ward there.
So
he was a second lieutenant at that time.
if we can hold questions until then, then we'll have a mic so people can hear you when you ask the question. So, so you were in Saigon, and what did you get a chance to go out to restaurants? What did you do? Did you eat off the economy? Or?
Well, didn't do a lot of traveling around because, like you said, we worked 12-hour shifts. It was either 12 hours daytime, 12 hours night. So by the time
did you eat off the economy?
Done working, you ate, you got ready for the next day, and you were in bed. So we didn't do a lot of traveling around. We did go out a few times down Saigon, travel to sightsee and so forth. Somebody mentioned, I think you asked somebody earlier, what was it like in Saigon? There were bad parts of Saigon where things weren't so pretty and so forth, but yet one of the parks we went to, you would thought you were over here in the United States. It was really beautiful. I did not travel around myself at all, except one time. Just down the street from us was a little place where they sold the ceramic elephants and so forth, and I wanted to get my husband a Christmas present, but I didn't want to go down there by myself. So I got one of the corpsmen to walk down there with me, went back to the quarters, went in and locked the door because I wanted to wrap it up before he got back. And he got back before I was finished wrapping it, and he knew somebody was in there because the door was locked, so he kicked the door open. So I didn't surprise him anyhow. Another time we went down Saigon, somebody was talking before we started this evening about the cowboys. If you went downtown, they would ride their little motorcycles and so forth, and they'd be eyeing up the GIs to see if they had cameras around their necks, around their arms, things like that and so forth, and then they'd come buzzing back by you again and grab a hold of the strap and trying to steal things like that. And that happened to us one time. My husband was coming up out of the seat, and I'm thinking, what's going on? And he had the camera strap around his arm, but the cowboy had a hold of it too, but he finally let go of it. So, like I said, they warned you not to go out and venture a lot downtown and so forth on your own because it was for your own safety.
Yeah, the cowboys like those Spidell bands that expanded because they could take them off and keep right on going on their motor scooters.
Right.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, going by, I remember seeing concertina wire and sandbags and MPs. What kind of security did you have there in the hospital?
Okay. At the hospital, the gates you went into, there was one in front of the hospital and one at the side. They had the guards there all the time. As far as inside, if there were, I don't remember them, but I don't remember guards walking around the hospital as far as inside on it. The ward had a door to go in, which it was like a big courtyard, and the hospital was kind of built around it. Our door into the ward was like a screen door. I don't remember another door on it, so I think probably at night we might have locked that somehow. And then to the back, where we had our medicine cabinet, nurse's desk and so forth, was a door. And I was always told, but I never know for sure, but I was told either Red Cross workers or USO workers would go up those back steps, and that's where some of them stayed up there. Now that door stayed locked all the time. But at nighttime, it would get a little scary sometimes, because especially in the wee hours of the morning, if you weren't busy, you'd be sitting there and you'd have all these thoughts going through your head and so forth.
Did y'all have USO shows, all of you, when you were come through? We usually had Filipino girls singing Rolling Through the Wibba. And I just wonder if y'all had those same shows.
While I was over there, I never attended one. They might have had some, but I don't remember. I never saw one.
All right. Coming back, now, how much time did your husband have in country when you got over there? Was he just getting there?
Well, he had been there before I met him, and then he got there in June of '70, and I got over there in September of '70.
Okay, so he was not a short timer by the time you got there then.
Right.
All right. Coming back now, you're a brand new nurse, and you probably got more experience than you could ever have going directly from nursing school to a hospital there in Saigon. What was it like to come home?
Coming home, when I came home, of course, I was in uniform, and I just got the looks. I remember the looks, and I'm sure people were talking behind my back and so forth. But coming home, to stay home after I was over in Vietnam, I had no problems. I traveled, my husband and I came back home together, and I sat between him and one of his buddies that he had been to jungle school with, and they kept harassing the stewardess playing the little Beep Beep Roadrunner, and she finally, after several times, she said, "Ma'am, would you like to move someplace else?" And I just laughed, and I said, "He's my husband." But as far as the way I was treated and so forth, I didn't have any problems. Like I've heard, and like I hear that the comrades that were around now in the VFW and VVA and so forth and that. And then, like I said, like I read in the book, the way some of them were treated when they came home. But I didn't experience any of that.
Okay, and you continued on with nursing?
I did, but it was 2 years. When we came home, we ended up at, my husband was stationed at Fort Bragg, and we ended up having twins in October, so I was busy. Yeah. And so I didn't go back to nursing until about 2 years later. But like some of the ladies have said, put it on your application, so forth, that you were Army nurse, where you worked and all that. Through all my nursing career, after I came back home, there was only one person that really acknowledged that even said anything about it, and that was a private-owned business. Nobody else ever even mentioned it, that you were a nurse, you served in Vietnam. Nothing was said about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question for all of you ladies up here. Would you do it again?
Yes.
Yes.
I think most GIs that I've seen it says the same thing, because it was quite an experience. You could never buy it. But this time I think we go back and we win the war instead of walking off from it. But
if I can say something, the main reason I went over is because I had in my mind I wanted to take care of our guys that were fighting the battles.
Yes.
yeah.
And then you had mentioned something about the type of patients that you had at Third Field. I think in the earlier years, when the war was going on and that, they got a lot of severe casualties there and so forth. But by the time I got there, they were going to other hospitals and things were kind of slowing down a little bit. So I really didn't see a lot of war injuries and things like that came on the ward. Some of them hurt their leg or their knees in that playing football for fun and relaxation and so forth. And we not only took care of our American GIs, but we had Australian soldiers. We had Vietnamese soldiers. We had mountain yards, which I don't know if any of you are familiar with the mountain yard people of Vietnam. They were not liked by the North or the South Vietnamese, and so they chose to fight with our Americans. And that really, you know, the North and South did not like them. We had some of them as patients. And Third Field not only had for a hospital for our GIs and that, but it was almost, some of the wards were like hospital back here in the States. They had a medical ward, and they also had pediatrics. And we even had, I had on my ward 2 little pediatric boys. I cannot remember what the one was there for, but he was blind. That was my first encounter with what they call the pollutes, the hard-boiled eggs with the embryo still in there. I was making my rounds one morning, and he bit into it, and I did not eat any eggs till I came back home after I saw that. Yeah. And also we had another little boy. He had fingers on his hands amputated because he had set bombs under our GI vehicles, and that's how he had his fingers amputated. But he was a mean little character, maybe 8 or 10 years old, and if you got close to him, he had enough left on his stump to grab a hold of you and pinch it really hard. So you had to watch when you had to do anything with him.
Right. So the users don't know, the Montagnards were you can relate to Montagnards somewhat like the American Indian. When we got there, they were using crossbows. The women were topless, but the South Vietnamese treated them really bad. And we had to go in, and actually a gentleman who was living in Raleigh until he passed away went in and recruited the Montagnards to fight for us. And the South Vietnamese military did not want to give Montagnards weapons because they were afraid they would turn them against them because they treated them so bad for so long. So that was the Montagnards. In the time that you were there, let's see, you were there in the 70s. There was rumors that the peace talks were going on and that things were going to be different. Some of them were pulling out. I know out in the field there were starting to be some soldiers who were saying, hey, I don't want to be the last person to die in Vietnam. There were starting to be more probably racial problems in the 70s, 70, 71. Did any of y'all experience that situation where you were and what you were doing? I would imagine if you were wounded, you didn't make any difference who was whose blood or who you were in the bed beside. But
yeah, I didn't. I had my first experience though of working with somebody that was a drug addict. It was on night shift, and after I made my rounds, everybody was sleeping, everything was calm, and that I always found something to do. You either had your documentation, you had your things to get in order to keep clean, your medicine cabinet to keep organized and all that. And of course, the medicine cabinet where the medicines were was always kept locked, but we had several drawers in there that had just some miscellaneous supplies and that. I opened the one drawer and there laid a hypodermic needle, and I'm thinking, now why would somebody put this needle and syringe in this drawer? So dummy me, I went and told the corpsman, look here. The next morning when the nurse came on and I was giving her report, I went and pulled the drawer open because I was going to show her, look what's in this drawer, and it was gone. Of course, he was the drug addict, and he had took it after he knew I knew where it was. And to this day, I don't ever know what happened to him, if he kept working on our ward or not. But I never even thought about him as being a drug addict.
yeah.
You know.
Well, when I was a volunteer at Third Field, and we didn't know that we were probably crossing in the night there, because we were at the same time. But I was the one who pushed the book cart into the bed, and it collapsed. I don't know if you remember that. But one time I was sent, several of us were sent to the drug ward, There was a ward at one time, wasn't there, where the drug people were staying? I know we went on because one of the fellows wanted me to go out on the street and get him some marijuana. But we were carrying jars of beans, and they were to guess how many beans were in the jar. And I just thought, ooh, you know, these guys are suffering. I don't know about this game, but anyway, I just thought it was interesting that the three of us were there at Third Field. But I was just a weekend volunteer.
I did not stay on orthopedics the whole time I was over there. They must have had a nurse that went home, and they needed one on the medical ward, and I was there a few months. I liked it, but I was used to orthopedics and felt like I had more experience with orthopedics and so forth. But I did learn something there that I didn't even learn in nursing school, and I'm thinking, okay, here I am an RN and don't even know how to do this. I had a corpsman teach me how to do IVs, and so that's where I learned how to do IVs.
I think at Third Field as well, weren't there a lot of hair lips? And they were doing
with
surgery.
the pediatrics.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I remember that.
I've got a question to ask you. There was, throughout the Vietnam War, there was all kinds of myths. And when you first got to Vietnam, one of the first training that most of the GIs got was situations with dealing with the young ladies of Vietnam. And supposedly, if you mess around with the young ladies of Vietnam, you could catch something called the Black Sif, and you never come home. Was there such a thing?
What is that to do with women in Vietnam? Well,
Bonnie,
As a nurse, I'm asking the
I
question.
know Bonnie thinks you're talking about her.
Well, that's
I never heard of that. I know a lot of the night we arrived and they went over, a lot of it was VD disease and so forth. So maybe that was a nickname for one of those. I
well.
don't
This was with the other disease they gave you penicillin or whatever, but with this one you couldn't come home. They just shipped you off someplace and you never come home. I was just wondering, and okay, that was a question I've had for a long time. I always want to ask a nurse.
And you still don't have the answer, huh?
And, all right, now again, thank all of y'all for being here, and
Thank you.
you really educated us and entertained us at the same time. I'm going to ask Joe Harsh to take the mic here. If you have a question, comment, or whatever to the ladies, raise your hand, holler, whatever, and Joe, the mic's not laying. Oh, I got it right up here. I was just testing you, see if you were paying attention. I didn't know with the Black Sif it did anything to your brain.
I don't think so.
Okay.
What?
Testing. Okay, it works. Just like Joel said it would.
Okay, anybody got a question?
Okay.
Mr. Matthews?
I'd like to direct this to Bonnie, first of all. Bonnie, you mentioned the first time you talked in public was in my classroom,
right.
and I wanted you to know before I asked the question that you did so much good coming into the classrooms, because the young men and women of Wake County schools especially, all of their knowledge on Vietnam was from the men. And in the classroom, there were a lot of girls, and they felt a little bit ostracized a little bit. And after speaking in class, when you left, how did you feel?
It was a very emotional session for me. I think I had some tears in there. Oh, you did? Yeah. It was a healing experience. It started. Yeah. I have to tell you, this Iraq-Afghan thing, every time I see the list of casualties, I have to read every single name
Sure.
and give them the respect that they deserve for serving.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bonnie. You know, one thing I think all of the vets and the guys here in the audience know, that it's hard coming into a classroom and talking to students, one of the hardest things you ever do, but it's something that you said we get more out of it than they do. And I know Nancy's been in my class before, and so has Lee. And Judy, have you had the chance to speak in any of the high school classes?
No, I haven't. I spoke to our youngest son's, one of his college history classes. That's the only place I've spoke
good.
about it.
Good.
It's interesting, it really is.
Thank you. You'll be called upon, believe me.
Any more questions? Paul, you got something you wanted, before I cut you off a while ago?
Yeah,
You got a-
I got a question. They talk so much about the PTSD that us guys suffered when we came back, and a lot of us didn't even know what PTSD was, and we kind of went, I hate to use the word, but underground for years. Did this affect the females too, especially the nursing corps, where a lot of the nurses saw real heavy casualties and lost men that they came kind of close with? Did PTSD come back to any of you people or any of your colleagues?
It didn't come back to me. I think I got busy with family and working and all that, but through the years, and now that I've got involved with Vietnam Veterans Chapter and VFW, and I've also worked with a VA representative from Greenville, and he comes to our Rocky Mountain VFW organization once a month to talk with spouses that are dealing with their husband or wife, whoever was in the military, about PTSD. And when you sit and listen and talk about it and that, you have some degree of it, but you don't realize it, or you've learned to deal with it. Some of them, the way they've talked and discussed the problems they've had, I'm thinking, wow, we either adjusted good or something. But then I've had another person that deals with veterans, and he says, everybody can get it, even the spouses, you can get secondary PTSD from trying to deal with it and live with your spouse. And I'm sure those nurses that did serve in places like China Beach and MASH, like we see on TV, where they did get those casualties and so forth, and I've read Women in Vietnam and some of the nurses' stories in there, yes, some of them did suffer with PTSD. And it follows you pretty much all your life.
Well, there's a spectrum of a reaction to trauma. And when you hear PTSD, you get a stereotype, kind of an idea of someone who can't be around any loud noise, and and some of them got labeled schizophrenic when they weren't schizophrenic because nobody knew what to do with them when they came back. But you don't have to have PTSD and have it to the point where it disrupts your life not to have an intense emotional response. Like this, I didn't know this was going to happen, but little things like a helicopter, any feeling of helplessness, which I didn't realize until I got back. Anytime I feel really helpless, I know where it came from now. So you can go on with your life and nobody labels you as anything. That does not mean that you don't have memories that stir up a tremendous emotional response.
Yeah, I think everybody who went to Vietnam came back changed some way or another, and it's there, and it does still affect our emotions and so forth. It's just like when we get together as Vietnam vets, we can tell stories and so forth that that other people couldn't relate to. I mean, I got to ask y'all something. How many of you ladies have a rat story? A rat story. If you were in Vietnam, you almost got to have a rat story because they were the size of good-sized Siamese cats. So, who wants to take that first?
I'll say. Saigon had some great restaurants, I might add. But there was one on the river, and it was on the second floor, and we were there eating. It had white tablecloths, but the people next door had left, and the rats came up on the table and started to eat the morsels. So we were like this, stamping till we could get our food finished and left. And they then came onto our table and started eating our remains.
So you know how you feel when you're in a restaurant if you see a roach bug? How was it if you'd see rats that, cat size? Who else has got a? Okay.
I got two things, but first I'm going to take advantage of Nancy's position. I've found that since I've retired, I seem to be dwelling on Vietnam a lot more. Is that part of PTSD, you think? That you're not having a visceral reaction, but you're dwelling on it?
Well, when you were working, you had a lot of things to focus on during the day that you may not now, and so your mind is freer to go to certain places and stay there. I haven't read any literature on that, but I think too that the older you get and the more you are with people who are there, and you realize that so many people have no idea what that was like. And for me, I feel like I want to stay in touch with all of you, because there will come a point when there won't be that many people left that we can talk to. And I think I have just noticed that it means more to me to remember and not to lose it and not to let that go and not to let my relationships go. So that doesn't really answer your question, but I think, I don't think it's uncommon. I don't think there's anything wrong with you.
I thought it was just me.
I think it's got something to do with getting just old age, Ron.
The other thing, those of you know me know that I'm very involved with the Vietnam Veteran Memorial. Have you ladies got any stories that I might be able to steal about trips to the wall?
You know, when we went up, we used to go up, and one time Lee came back and she said she felt the wall, and do you remember saying that? You felt the wall, you felt the person, something like that. I'll never forget that.
It's a memory that you can never leave behind. The brothers that passed and the ones that are still around.
I used to work at the wall when I lived up there, and on Sundays, people who can't get to the wall would like name rubbings, and so that was our job. And vets would come and stand at that wall, and you could feel the emotions. Even if they just stood there bowed, you just felt it. That was quite an experience to be part of the wall.
It's like walking in a dream again.
Yeah.
Well, I remember an experience that one of our guest panelists had taking pictures at the wall. You want to tell us about that experience? You're taking pictures at the wall, and you and Lee, you in the Park Police?
I'm sorry, but my mind is not here anymore.
That's all right.
Remind me.
Yeah. We'll handle that later. But Lee asked for permission to take pictures up on the wall, and when she got up there, she got tackled by some policemen and gave her a hard time. And
one of the ladies is my mother, Lee, and but I want to ask all four of you this question. With your varying backgrounds of different things that you did, how do you look back? Well, let me rephrase that. With your experiences in Vietnam, how do you look upon the modern day military and the State Department and the other groups that are around the military and the actions overseas? How do you think the more involved role of women, how do you feel about that?
I being in the military for so long, that the troops, I'm supporting them left and right. It's the ones that are making the rules that the troops have to follow that I disagree sometimes with them and just want to smack them.
Yeah. When I got back, and as again, I didn't talk about Vietnam or think about it that much for a while, and when the first Gulf War broke out, I wanted to go. I just felt like they're over there. I know what to do. I've been there. I need to go. And of course, I was not in a position to do that. But I felt, again, like Lee said, reminded me, my mother saved all my letters home. And after she died, I read some of them. I did not realize how angry I was in Vietnam. I was angry not at the guys. They were doing what they had been ordered to do. They were holding up the best they could.
Is it civilians? The civilians you were mad at?
No, well, no, I mean the superiors, the people who were, the war
yeah.
machine, the businesses, the Washington. I was so angry at the people who weren't there doing the work. But I supported every patient that I saw, even the ones who had retreated into an extreme position one way or another. And that feelings, I worry about that some now still when I see people coming back. The only thing I'm glad about now is that there is more recognition given to the emotional needs of soldiers who come back and being accepted and not being discriminated against.
I've got a question that,
Joe,
it's-
hold on, Judy has.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I volunteer with an agency in Wilson called Veterans Residential Services of Wilson. We help the homeless and needy and at-risk veterans in Wilson County and several other counties here in North Carolina. And to see the conditions that some of them come in and their needs, living on the street in their vehicles, having no food. Some of them, we do have a small food pantry and we have clothing and household items that people donate that we're able to help our veterans through this. And they will come in, families have nothing to do with them. We had one son that was homeless, but when he finally got some of his VA benefits awarded to him, his mother welcomed him into her home. Well, now he can come and get food from us, so she comes along thinking she's going to pick and choose and do all this too. So, you know, they have nothing to do with them until they can come in and bring some money into the house. It's really sad to see the conditions that they're in. Some of them have no transportation. They will take the bus so far and then they'll walk the rest of the way to get to our little agency so they can get some things. Then there's only one paid position in this organization. The rest of us are all volunteers. So we will take them back to their homes. One guy will let us go downtown Wilson, tell us where to stop at the stop sign, let me out here. He doesn't want us to know where he stays, but we found out he stays in an old abandoned house. No electricity, no running water, nothing. So that really irks the daylights out of me. All these vacant buildings around, why can't the government make little hotel rooms or just little rooms or something and put up some of our veterans to keep them off the street? You know, it's sad to see what they go through, some of them.
This question is actually for Lee Wilson, but I'd like her two siblings, Mike and Belinda up front, to answer this.
That's not fair.
I said two children.
Siblings?
Oh, no, not two siblings, two children.
Kids.
Children.
But I'm a vet and I don't know what I'm talking about. Was Lee a tougher mother after Vietnam than the average mother that
Well, I had them after I came back.
I'm actually old enough to have gotten the old your mother wear combat boots. joke. My mom actually showed up that afternoon in her fatigues and her combat boots, so it worked out for me. Yes, she was tough.
You got another question, Joe? I have a question for the panel. Recently was the 40th anniversary of the fall of Saigon. You'd gone to Vietnam, you had done your duty, you came home. What was it like when you saw those tanks burst through the gates in Saigon and realized it was all over? What was your thoughts? Judy, I'll start with you. You have a thought on that?
Why were our guys really over there?
Nancy?
Like that, why are there over 58,000 names on the wall and it fell anyway?
Bonnie, you have a,
I have to, could I read something that I
Certainly.
found that when we go overseas, we're given a post report, you know, what dishes to bring. But this was for Vietnam. Personnel chosen for duty in Vietnam will join in the concerted effort of the United States to help the Vietnamese defeat the communist objective of subjugating this country. And I just shook my head when I saw it, watched
the
that film.
concerted effort.
Yep.
Yeah. Ladies, you have a comment on that, or?
I do, but it's not nice, so I'll just pass it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll add one more thing, to see the condition that our young guys came back. And their lives were affected the rest of their lives. Some could deal with it and some could not. And I don't know how many of you know, but there's a lot of suicides going on today. And some of them were only 18, 19 years old. Had their whole life ahead of them. And then, like I just made a comment earlier, some of their families didn't even want anything to do with them. So,
Thank you, Judy. We have another question for you.
This is for each of you ladies, and I'm sure most of you in the audience know that we have spent 20 years teaching Vietnam to America, and we know about the wall to heal the nation. And one of our travels the last couple of years, we were coming home, and every time you see a Vietnam veteran with a cap on like mine, what the guys are wearing, one of the common greetings is welcome home. Then you say, when were you in Vietnam? Well, we stopped to eat one day, and this guy walked in with a cap on like ours, and Bill Dixon walks over and he says to the guy, how you doing? Welcome home. When were you in Vietnam? And he looked at him and he said, last night. And all of us just looked at each other.
Wow.
And when he said last night, Bill looked at me. We had that made on a t-shirt. Now my question to you, young ladies, and again for all of us, I want to thank you for your thoughts. Were you in Vietnam last night? When you close your eyes, are you back there as quick as we are?
Once in a while, I will wake up for some reason during TIT, and I guess over the years, maybe probably from Vietnam, I've learned how to block. I'm really good at blocking things that bother me, and that's how I handle it.
Any more questions? We'll bring that to you. Okay.
We're dealing with.
We need a mic so we can.
I thought I'd be loud enough for that.
No.
We deal with a situation about posers or wannabes and people who claim to be Vietnam vets but never served. The numbers are huge. We can't even get a good count on how many of us are still around because of the lies that they're telling. What do you ladies think about that? I know what you think, Lee. Go ahead, tell us anyway.
Oh, yeah.
For
But remember
example,
where you're at, Lee.
for example, there's about a little less than 3 million of us, all of us together, who served in Vietnam. The last census had 13 million people who claim to be Vietnam vets.
Yeah, they, in a way, they're taking something from us. Like when we go to the schools, we're telling the truth to the kids, so they get some information that's true. But when you get these posers, they're out there telling stories that, you know, I'm Joe Combat Guy. I killed 20 million people and saved Vietnamese people. You just want to walk up and smack them. Bonnie? You know me.
Bonnie would talk them.
Well, there's some that will say that, yeah, I'm a Vietnam vet. To me, a Vietnam vet is one that had boots on the ground. And a lot of folks, I know there were a lot of people that served during the Vietnam era, but they call themselves Vietnam veterans.
Yeah.
To me, there's a big difference.
I like it.
Well, I had an experience with that. I went years ago to get into the health system, and the lady sat there, we did all the paperwork and everything, and she said, well, I'm a veteran too, and she said, I'm sorry to say, but women are low on the totem pole, you don't qualify. I didn't have a problem with it, I was healthy. I thought, I'm not gonna worry about it. The guys that really need it
When was
should
this?
get it. This was probably 8-10 years ago.
Oh, my goodness.
So then when I got active in VVA and VFW and all that, and the guys are saying, you don't even have a health card? We need to do something about that. So last year is when I finally got my card. But I went, my husband had an appointment, so I went, had my copy of my 214, so forth, went and talked to the lady, and she said, well, all we need to do is update your information. And I'm thinking, update? That means you've got to have something in the system if you're going to update. So I said, can I take the form home? She said, yeah. So I took it home, completed it, went back the next week, and it was a different lady that called me into her office. Had my 214 in my hand. I told her why I was there, so forth. She sat down, she started on her computer, and she said, well, I don't think you qualify. I said, well, then how come the lady I just talked to last week said everybody that was over in Vietnam, you automatically qualified? She shouldn't have made that comment to you. So she went on and on and on. She said, I'm a Vietnam veteran too. I said, oh, really? When were you over there? She never acknowledged my question. Well, the more we talked, I could tell my voice was getting louder and louder. And finally, I got up and was standing over her shoulder with my paper in hand, and she asked me another question, and I said, that's what I've been telling you. She said, oh, you were actually in country. I said, yes. I said, right there it says it. She said, oh, let me send your paperwork to Georgia, and I'll call you Monday. You call me if you don't hear from me, and well, I'm sure you'll be in the system. And I'm thinking, you know. So apparently she was a Vietnam veteran era too. She wasn't a Vietnam veteran.
Yeah.
Well, at this time, before everybody leaves, I want to thank all of you ladies for being here. I want to give you a hand. I want to, I'm working on it. You're on page 12, I'm on 11. Okay. I want to thank the museum for allowing us to be here tonight, and I think we have a special presentation from Debbie with the museum. Come on up. Well, let me get the microphone.
I have a special friend here too. I have to, okay. It's okay if I bring her up.
Can I have the mic?
We won't hit her.
Do I have to use this mic? I'm not very good at this.
Just pretend it's not there, and I'll hold it.
All right. My name is Debbie Vaughn, and I do work here at the museum. I work in the museum shop. And I'm also with Yates Mill Daughters of the American Revolution. One of the things that we do as a chapter is we reach out to veterans, and we recognize them, especially with this 50th anniversary. We have a whole commemorative team, and so we are service-oriented. And I brought along with me a friend who is also in my chapter. This is Carolyn Kaputska. And Carolyn served as a nurse in the Vietnam War. I don't know too much.
Welcome home.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Carolyn Kapuska, and I was at the 93rd Evac Hospital in Long Binh, Vietnam, in 66 and 67. And after my second tour, I left the Army, and later on I joined the State Department Foreign Service. And met my husband in Afghanistan, actually. So, yes, I would do it again and again and again. It was the highlight of my entire eventful nursing career.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for your service, and thank you for all the things you're doing. Ladies, how do you want to do this?
Once again, from Yates Mill Chapter, DAR, we just want to thank you for your service, and I just don't have the right words to express our gratitude for all that you've done. And I'm sorry, I think these are drifting a little bit on the bottom, so I apologize for that.
Listen, if they were in Vietnam during the monsoons, they dripped before.
Yeah. And Carolyn, this is for you, and then these are just some little cards, just little thank you cards from our chapter that you can pass along. And then we have some little buttons here. But thank you from the bottom of our hearts for all that you've done. And thank you for this group. I have gotten to know this group a little bit. I've gotten to know Bob a little bit.
You
And
can overcome that.
I can overcome that. Should I get to know you?
That's
Better
even worse.
choice? Okay, that's worse. Okay, I'll stick with Bob then. But we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We love you, and we're just here to support you. So,
Is Larry Hines in your,
Larry Hines, I'm sorry, Larry Hines is in a chapter that's in Raleigh, and she's in, it's, I can't think of it. It's a chapter in Raleigh. She is a regent in a Raleigh chapter.
she is the only life member that we have in our organization. She was very instrumental in the beginning with the memorial and so forth.
Right. And Larry, that's true. And Larry could not be here this weekend. She's away on a trip. But yeah, her chapter, I believe, is Samuel Johnson, and I'm in Yates Mill chapter in Cary. So.
Well, thank you for coming in and recognizing our ladies tonight and bringing us another nurse. Well, listen, we meet right there in Cary at the VFW. We'd love to have you come in and meet sometime at our meetings. It's the fourth Tuesday of each month. We have dinner about between 6:15 and 6:30. The meeting starts at 7 o'clock. We furnish dinner, and we try to be through. And you can come in, and we'll try to behave and be good if you're there. But again, thank you all very much for coming out. Be careful going down the steps.
Thank you.
Folks, we thank you all for coming. Don't forget our next two symposiums, and especially I want to thank Cherie here for the museum, and Joel back there in the back, hiding in the dark room back there in the back with our sound.
We had Vietnamese soldiers.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the symposium, the women who served in Vietnam. The ladies were very special ladies from different backgrounds and different services and so forth. Just wanted to take a moment to tell you about our next show. The next show we'll have a couple of authors of a book called Tears of a Warrior. It's the beginning of a series we're going to do on post-traumatic stress. He was a Vietnam vet, came back, he was an officer who served in Vietnam. He came back and was suffering from post-traumatic stress. His wife and he wrote about their experiences and what they learned and so forth. It's a great book. The National Purple Heart organization bought a bunch of the books and give them out at the vet centers. And looking forward to hearing their story and finding out more about post-traumatic stress. Until we come back for our next show, I hope you have a good week, and 2 weeks, I guess, till we come back. And thank you for tuning into this one.
We have a meeting this coming Saturday, right?
The following Saturday would be the POWMIA ceremony. This coming Saturday is actually, let's see, we are in April. The 30th is Saturday, so the POW ceremony will be May 7th. And the American Legion out of Newbern will be coming down to do the guest readings of the names. So if you're in the area, come down and join us reading the names of the 39 we honor for being still missing. And also, if you're a golfer and you live in the area, the North Carolina Vietnam Veterans Incorporated is putting on a golf tournament to raise money for education of post-traumatic stress and Agent Orange issues. If you go to ncvva.org, .org. I believe it's .org, if not .com, and pull up the information about the golf tournament. You can have a good time, plus help out with the very, very needed cause with the education of Agent Orange, and for the veterans as well as their children, as well as the post-traumatic stress information to be giving out. Thank you again for tuning in.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, My Life, My Will with Gisela DiCarlo, The Tanya Love Show, Health Then with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Triangle Be Well with Howard Jacobson, Lunch and Learn with Rabbi Yisrael Cutler, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, Parent Dome with Ryan Miller, Current Affairs with Amnon Nissan. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section on nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Atomos.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.